There are 9 playable classes in the Burning Crusade, with each one of them offering a different playstyle on how they kill their opponent. And in this video, I will be covering every single one of these classes. To start things off, we are going to be covering one of my favorite classes. We are of course talking about the Priest. The Discipline Priest is an extremely aggressive healer that relies heavily on their instant cast abilities. The 3 most common spells that you're going to be pressing in the arena to keep your team alive is Power Word Shield, which gives you a fairly powerful shield, which is instant, as well as having Prayer of Mending, which is an instant heal that you can throw at people and will bounce 5 times, healing each time they take damage, and finally having Renew. These 3 spells are very core for your class and will be the majority of your total healing. You do have abilities like Flash Heal, Greater Heal, and Binding Heal, which you need to use sometimes if somebody is taking a ton of damage and have the ability to free cast. Disc Priests also have the single best Dispel in the entire game because it is the only dual purpose Dispel. This ability actually removes 2 helpful debuffs off of the enemy and dispels 2 negative debuffs off of your teammates. You are the only healer in the entire game that is able to dispel 2 magical effects at the same time off of your teammates. Why you would enjoy playing Disc Priest is because you like being aggressive and pushing in for fears on the enemy team, while on top of that having the highest damage output of any healer in the game. You also have the highest damage reduction cooldown with Pain Suppression, allowing whoever it is cast on to stay offensive and start trading damage. Combining those factors with your instant heals, dispels, and purges, this makes the Disc Priest a very scary sight when played correctly. The reasons why you wouldn't want to play a Disc Priest is that they are the only healer in the entire game with no freedom or movement speed buff. This forces you to walk through the arena while being slowed extremely often. You are also the only healer in the game without a Poison Cleanse. This has a massive impact since rogues are extremely common in the Burning Crusade and you have absolutely 0 ways to deal with their poisons unless you are a dwarf. You also need to be aggressive as a Discipline Priest because if you are not utilizing your fear, damage, and offensive purges, then you will lose momentum since you can't compete with other healers that are able to dispel the wound poison while sitting back and healing. You are the most punished healer for positioning, since you have no freedoms or movement speed buffs, while also needing to run at the enemy to be effective with your fear. This will make or break most games for you. If an aggressive playstyle isn't your thing, then Disc Priest probably isn't either. In the Burning Crusade, your race actually changes some of the abilities on the Priest class as well. I will put all of the unique abilities from your race on the screen. The quick synopsis is that if you are Horde, Undead is the best for you as a Disc Priest, since there are a ton of ways that you can get feared, and Will of the Forsaken is really strong, since it has no internal cooldown with your trinket. As for the Alliance, Dwarf is certainly the strongest since you not only have Desperate Prayer, which is a huge heal, but also have Stone Form, which will clear any bleeds or poisons off of you. This allows you to use Stone Form, removing wound poison, and then Desperate Prayer, giving you a very large instant heal for yourself. You also get Chastise, which deals damage and is a 2-second root, giving you a total of 3 extra abilities just for playing Dwarf. A very important piece of information is that silences in the Burning Crusade do not have a diminishing return, which means they can silence you infinitely and it'll never be shorter the next time. One thing that's important to know is that Stone Form is the biggest counter in the game to Garrote as a healer, seeing as if you press Stone Form, not only will all the bleeds and poisons come off you, but it will make it so the rogue is unable to re-Garrote you and silence you for a second time. You are completely immune to Garrote silence while having Stone Form up. Whereas, if you did already have a Garrote on you, it will not remove the silence, but it will remove the bleeds. This is absolutely insane into rogues in general, and especially comps like Double Rogue. Moving on to the most hated class by mages in all of the Burning Crusade, we are now covering the Warlock. This class is a control-based caster that primarily uses instant cast spells to do damage. As a class that primarily uses dots for damage, your 3 main ones are going to be Corruption, Curse of Agony, and then Siphon Life, with Siphon Life being the longest dot in the game. This spell specifically is extremely strong because it not only heals you, but is instant, lasts 30 seconds, does a ton of damage, and of course is non-dispellable by druids and shamans. And you are going to be fighting a lot of druids and shamans in this expansion. In the Burning Crusade, you are only allowed to have 1 type of curse per target. This makes you choose sometimes if you want to control or do damage. For example, if you're trying to kite somebody, you would want to use Curse of Exhaustion to slow them down, which would allow you to kite them. If you want to switch it, you can immediately bring it to Curse of Agony, or if it's a caster, you can slow them down with Tongues, and then if it's a melee, you could even reduce their damage with Curse of Weakness. All of these are interchangeable and are switchable on the fly. You would enjoy playing Warlock if you liked multitasking by tracking all of your dots on multiple targets at the same time, while also managing your pet's position and cooldowns like dispelling your teammates with Devour Magic. You also have the best spammable CC in the game with Fear. This spell has no cooldown and is extremely strong since it won't instantly break on damage like Polymorph does. This makes it very impactful since you can take whichever player you want out of the game whenever your DR is up on Fear. Warlocks are very tanky thanks to their Soul Link talent giving them a flat 20% damage reduction whenever their pet is alive. Since Resilience in TBC does not give flat damage reduction, this only makes Soul Link stronger. Pairing that with their extra healing abilities, Health Stone, and a lot of CC, this is a very hard class to take down. A major con of the Warlock class is that you have absolutely zero mobility, so your potential to kite people is completely based off of your usage of Fear, Curse of Exhaustion, and Death Toil. This makes your positioning matter immensely, seeing as getting caught out of position will only assure your death. One of the reasons Warlocks pair so well with Rogues and Druids is this exact reason. Since you don't have any major ways to get melees off of you, especially Warriors, you need your teammate to do it for you, with spells like Cyclone and Entangling Roots, as well as having Cheap Shot and Kidney from the Rogue. You are extremely reliant on your pet for not only its spells, but also its health. Once your pet dies, you can only resummon it one time for 15 minutes with Feldom. This ability is actually purgeable by the enemy, so if you press Feldom and get purged on it, you are in a very bad situation, seeing as you just lost your Dispel, Interrupt, and Soul Link. Warlock has one of the highest amount of decisions to make during the arena, seeing as you are always looking at 3 different enemies and having an option to engage with all 3 of them in a certain way. On top of that, monitoring your own positioning, making sure you're not getting caught out while pushing in and being effective, as well as keeping your pet alive and keeping your pet's positioning in a good spot. All of this makes Warlock a decently challenging class for a new player. However, once you get the hang of it, it is not terribly hard in the Burning Crusade. Moving on to our first melee in the video, and of course the weakest class in the entire game, we are now covering the Rogue. The Subtlety Rogue is a control-heavy brawler that is able to duel any class in the game and come out ahead as long as they have the right cooldowns to do it. The primary playstyle of the Rogue is utilizing your Stealth, which gives you new abilities such as Sap, Cheap Shot, and Garrote. All of these are very strong in certain situations because it allows you to get an advantage over your opponent. For example, if you Cheap Shot, not only is that a 4-second stun, but it has no diminishing return with Kidney. Sap is also a monumental ability, seeing as it controls the target for you for 10 seconds, assuming they are out of combat. This allows you to get a perfect opener on them with something like Garrote or Cheap Shot as we saw before. The 2 primary abilities you'll be pressing the most are Hemorrhage, which is your primary source of damage, and then Shiv, which will help you apply your poison. Both of these abilities apply combo points for a grand total of 5 when you are at your maximum. Combo points can be used for an assortment of abilities like Rupture, Kidney Shot, Eviscerate, Expose Armor, and many more. Utilizing your abilities in Stealth, while also your abilities out of Stealth on top of your combo point and energy management is key to being a successful rogue. You would enjoy this class if you like stunning people while also utilizing your control abilities like Blind, Sap, and Gouge to stay ahead of the enemy team. Since you are able to go back into Stealth when you drop combat, this promotes a gameplay style where you stun a target, deal a bunch of damage, and then have the option to go for a re-stealth, allowing you to now utilize your stealth abilities. Rogues also have the largest toolkit out of any class in the entire game, giving you an extremely broad range of strategies on how you can defeat your opponent. Thanks to your poisons, you have the best slow in the game, with crippling at 70%. You are also relevant the entire expansion. There is never a time when Rogue is weak, making it a rewarding class to pick at any point in any season. Putting all these factors together, you have the most comp availability as well, allowing you to play many different comps for a wide variety of different playstyles, all with one class. A major drawback to the Rogue is that they are extremely cooldown dependent. While they do have the largest toolkit in the entire game, they are also the most reliant on this toolkit. They rely heavily on their stealth abilities as well to generate pressure. If a rogue is unable to utilize Vanish due to them being fairy fired, for example, they are significantly less effective. Since rogues are so reliant on their opener, getting knocked out of stealth by an ability before they're able to open can completely flip the tide of the game. They are also fairly weak to physical damage since they have a low amount of armor and no baseline damage reduction. This allows them to die rather quickly once they have used all of their cooldowns and have no way left to control the enemy. The rogue is a class with good sustained damage, good mobility, and decent defensives. Combining this with their large toolkit and comp variety makes the rogue a very solid choice for TBC Arena. Up next is the King of Zug. We are now covering the Arms Warrior. This class is a damage-focused bruiser that makes up for what it lacks in control with raw damage. Your primary mobility utilizes your charge out of combat to get to your target, since you only have one in-combat charge with Intercept. It is absolutely essential that you do not waste your Intercept since it is a 15-second cooldown. If you use your Intercept and then get caught out of position, you are no longer able to get to your kill target. Moving on to your core rotation, your most important ability as a warrior is Mortal Strike. This reduces all healing on your target by 50% for 10 seconds. It is absolutely essential that you keep your Mortal Strike up on the kill target at all times. The difference between you killing somebody and not killing somebody is usually linked to this effect. Outside of Mortal Strike, your main damaging abilities are Rend, Whirlwind, and Heroic Strike. Something that is unique to Warrior is their different stances which cause you to lose rage when you switch between them. If you find yourself with a bunch of excess rage, spamming Heroic Strike and Sunder Armor is a great way to dump it quickly. Why you would want to play Warrior is because you enjoy beating things to death with a big hammer. On top of that, you also have the highest baseline damage out of any class in the entire expansion. You do have decent mobility as well, with Charge, Intercept, and Intervene. If you go Gnome, you also get the Escape Artist racial, which is extremely strong, since you have no way to remove roots and slows off yourself, and are often paired with a Druid who can't dispel Mage's Frost Nova. Warriors also have stun resistance as a passive talent, which is very good, since rogues are so prevalent and their primary way of killing things is to stun them. You can increase this by an additional 15% if you are an Orc for a total of 30% stun resistance. This is extremely strong, since you can sometimes just win a game by resisting a stun, as seen in this clip.
We're killing chip shot. I'll sap,
Yeah,
I'll sap. You have time? Killing chip shot?
4 seconds, 4 seconds.
Yeah. He has to die in chip shot, Obolus.
I understand.
Resist! Resist, Garrett! I'm done. That's it for me. Yeah. Thanks for watching the stream. Make sure to follow, hit subscribe.
Warriors are pretty tanky in general on top of that, especially in the later seasons thanks to the amount of stamina the gear gives. They also have some generally tanky abilities like Defensive Stance, Spell Reflect, and Shield Block. You are also the only class in the game with Disarm, which is extremely powerful if you use it at the right time. Getting rogues out of stealth is not that difficult for you since you have a very wide shout with Demoralizing Shout and Piercing Howl. One of the major weaknesses that the warrior has is that they are very reliant on RNG for most of their damage, since you are heavily relying on your mace stun to proc or your sword to proc, plus getting a critical strike to secure most of your kills. It can also be a problem for you if your mortal strike gets dodged. Putting all of these things together makes it so that sometimes you do no damage and sometimes you global a target. You are of course very susceptible to being kited since you don't have a way to remove slows outside of the gnome racial, assuming you are that race. Furthermore, you are very weakened to mages as a general matchup since you don't have any great way to connect with them. Once you use your intercept, they can simply blink or nova you and then walk away. You also don't have a super large toolkit as a warrior since your primary strategy is to just beat something to death with your raw damage. Lastly, warriors have a handful of comps that they can play, which are all very strong, but only a handful. Combining all of these factors leaves Warrior in a very rigid but powerful position for TBC Arena. Speaking of mages, they are the next class that we are now covering. The Frost Mage is a class that has tons of control and the biggest burst damage in the entire game, assuming they are in the right position to make it happen. Your primary damaging abilities as a Frost Mage are Frostbolt, Ice Lance, Fire Blast, and Cone of Cold. One thing unique to the TBC Mage is that their Water Elemental is actually a massive amount of their overall damage. For one, their pet's Water Bolts actually hit quite hard. On top of that, their pet can cast Freeze, which is off global since the pet is actually the one casting it. This allows you to cast a Frostbolt into an Ice Lance and at the very last second freeze the target with your pet, increasing the damage they take dramatically. Mages are also one of the only classes in the game who can actually remove a Silence with Ice Block, seeing as you are unable to trinket a Silence in the Burning Crusade. On top of that, mages have the second highest burst in the entire game with their Shadow combos. The damage they can do is absolutely absurd, assuming they are able to free cast, especially in the later seasons. Why you would want to play Mage is because you enjoy playing a caster who has good instant damage along with a ton of control and good defensives. Mages have an absolute boatload of crowd control with your Novas, Slows, Silence, and Polymorph. This allows you to pair well with many different types of classes since you are able to contribute with more than just damage alone. Thanks to all of your crowd control, you allow not only yourself but also your teammates the ability to reset and eat when needed, which is incredibly important for comps like Rogue, Mage, and 2v2. You also have some of the highest consistent damage output in the entire game, assuming you are able to free cast and have uptime on your kill target. A major downside to the Mage, though, is that they are incredibly mana dependent. While Mages deal a truckload of damage, they are on a timer since they use so much mana while dealing the damage. Combining this with the fact that their water elemental only lasts 45 seconds and has a 3-minute cooldown, this forces them to get value when using their CDs, and if they don't get value while they use their CDs, then they immediately fall behind. They are also extremely cooldown dependent as a class. If a mage has no water elemental and no icy veins, their damage will be significantly reduced. This also translates into their defensives as well, since they rely so heavily on Ice Barrier, Blink, and Ice Block to stay alive. Mages also have the lowest amount of base armor in the entire game, making them very susceptible to physical damage from classes like Rogues, Warriors, and Hunters. This is why they rely so heavily on their control and defensive spells to stay alive. Combining all these factors puts the Mage in an extremely strong position across every single season of the Burning Crusade, and definitely a fun one if you enjoy playing casters. Moving on to our next class, we have the Marksmanship Hunter. This class has a very specific toolkit for running the enemy team out of mana while utilizing its traps and pet to secure victory. The Hunter has a fairly wide amount of different damaging abilities, however, certain ones can be more situational than others. As a general rule of thumb, your primary damaging abilities are Arcane Shot, Serpent Sting, and Multi-Shot, while also utilizing Viper Sting off cooldown onto whoever's mana you are trying to drain. The primary playstyle as a Marksmanship Hunter in the Burning Crusade is using your control abilities like Scatter Shot, Frost Trap, Freezing Trap, and Silencing Shot to stay alive long enough to kill the enemy team. While you do deal a bit of damage, you are not a super bursty class and rely heavily on outlasting the enemy more than killing someone with raw damage. This makes them pair well with anyone who can play longer games, for example the Restoration Druid. You can also play Priest Hunter in 2v2 as well. While there are other comps they can play, these two are the ones that have the most success. If you don't like long arena games, then this class probably isn't for you, since the only short game you will ever fight is a double DPS one. Why you would want to play the Hunter is because you enjoy playing longer games where your goal is to outlast the opponent utilizing your toolkit of control to keep the tempo of the game in your favor. The strengths of the Hunter is that they have a solid toolkit of slows, roots, and crowd control to keep the enemy team's momentum controlled while you try to get the edge. You do have Flare, which is an incredibly strong ability since it has an extremely wide range and is very difficult for rogues and druids to deal with. You also have the best mana drain in the entire game with Viper Sting. This ability drains mana at an alarming rate, especially in the very early seasons. Hunters are very good at outlasting and winning on mana into almost any type of team, since their pet is so good at preventing the enemy healer from drinking, combining that with their Viper Sting. The weaknesses of the Hunter is that they have absolutely zero mobility, so if they do get caught out of position with none of their control spells available to save them, they might die right there. They are also very reliant on their pet, so this makes it a great target for the enemy team, which can drain your healer's mana quickly trying to keep it alive. Hunters themselves are also surprisingly mana dependent. If they find themselves dead it can spell disaster for them, especially if they are in a situation where they can't res their pet. Lastly, Hunters have no major defensive cooldowns. This forces them to play a very defensive and pillar-focused game most of the time, because if they get caught in the open, their death is all but guaranteed. The Hunter is an Outlast class in the Burning Crusade that has a decently wide toolkit of spells to slow the game down and control the pacing. Assuming you don't get run over in the opener and can control the momentum of the game, you will find success with this class. Up next, we have the Lord of Lifebloom. The Resto Druid is a very diverse healer with the largest toolkit in the game in terms of its capabilities. It has control, healing, mobility, and defensives, making it a superb healer throughout the Burning Crusade. Your primary heal in this expansion is Lifebloom, a 7-second healing over time effect that refreshes and stacks up to 3 times every time you cast it on a target. You also have Rejuvenate, Regrowth, and Healing Touch, however, these are more emergency heals and situational depending on how much damage someone is taking. The primary way a Resto Druid keeps its team alive is actually with its crowd control. Utilizing Entangling Roots, Feral Charge, and Cyclone, all while rolling Life Blooms, is paramount when trying to keep yourself and teammates alive. You have the best mobility in the entire game out of any class as a Restoration Druid, on top of having any root or slow being instantly removed from you, simply by shifting in or out of any form. Not to mention you have a travel form, giving you a baseline speed buff. It's important to manage your mana as this class and not overcommit when it's unnecessary. While your toolkit is absolutely massive, overshifting and attempting to deal damage in a situation where you aren't going to land a kill will ultimately put you behind. With that being said, however, you do have the largest toolkit to finish kills since you can actually kick their healer with Feral Charge, as well as getting combo points on your target to get a maim ready. In a situation where your kill target is low but looks like they are going to survive, you should be utilizing Cyclone to keep that target at a low health, allowing your teammates to set up a way to finish the game. Since you can only Cyclone one person at a time, this allows you to make a play where you switch your Cyclone early, catching the enemy team off guard. Why you would want to play Resto Druid is because you enjoy instant cast healing, as well as having a ton of mobility with the most crowd control in the game. Resto Druids have the strongest instant cast hots, making them great at keeping their team healthy without ever having to stand still and cast a heal. They also have the largest crowd control toolkit in the entire game. With Cyclone, Entangling Roots, Feral Charge, Bash, and Fairy Fire, the amount of CC this one class can put out is absurd. When played correctly, this class has the best survivability in the game out of any healer, thanks to Bear Form and its absurd amount of mobility. No other healer in the game is able to charge across the arena, wall rolling instant hots, and then also control the DPS who is trying to kill them with an NS clone all at the same time. Cyclone is arguably the best crowd control that has ever been put into the game, since it locks anyone's health bar in place and makes them immune to literally every spell in the game. This makes the skill ceiling with Cyclone quite high, allowing you to single-handedly win games with proper Cyclones. The downsides that come with Resto Druid are few, but very prominent. The first one being that they do not have a magic dispel, which is an extremely big deal in a ton of different matchups. This means that whenever there is a mage in the game, the Resto Druid's partner will be sitting in a truckload of CC like Sheeps and Novas, since the Druid has no way to remove them. Resto Druids are also very weak to purges. Abilities like Abolish Poison and most of the Resto Druid's heals are very costly on mana, so if they are spamming these all while getting purged down, it puts them on the back foot not only on their mana but also on whoever is dying. While they do have a great amount of survivability thanks to their Bear Form and ability to shift, if the Resto Druid finds themselves with no trinket and gets caught out of form, it is very easy for them to die in a set of stuns. A unique spell that is imperative to the Resto Druid's toolkit is Innervate. This spell is a strength and a weakness all in one, since it is purgeable. You do need to find a window to use this, because if you are low on mana and get purged on your Innervate, your demise is almost guaranteed. The Restoration Druid is an incredibly powerful healer in the Burning Crusade, and has the largest toolkit of any healer in the entire game. If you enjoy healing over time effects and being immune to polymorph, then this class might be the right one for you. Speaking of healers, up next is the Restoration Shaman. This class has the best buff in the entire game with Bloodlust, along with a great amount of offensive abilities to keep your team aggressive while having enough defensive capability to survive. Your primary heal is Earth Shield, which is an instant cast spell that heals the target every time they take direct damage. You also have castable heals depending on what the situation calls for. You are the only healer in the game with two different ways to stop incoming spells thanks to Earth Shock and Grounding Totem. This makes you great at mitigating casters. You have a good amount of support for any class thanks to your wide array of totems, with some of them being extremely powerful like Wind Fury. Why you would want to play a Resto Shaman is because you like having an aggressive playstyle while also having a solid amount of disruption for casters with Grounding Totem and Earthshock. Bloodlust is a major pro for the Shaman, with it being the strongest buff in the entire game. You also have great mobility thanks to your spell Ghost Wolf. This makes it so you cannot go below your baseline movement speed even while you are slowed, and then without slows you gain a speed buff. Into teams without Purge, Earth Shield is a very strong ability since it has 6 charges and heals for quite a good amount. You are the only healer in the game, with slows like Earthbind Totem, Frost Shock, and Frostbrand Weapon making you very good at kiting. Some of the negatives for the Resto Shaman is that they are forced to cast to keep their team alive in many scenarios. This makes them very susceptible to Curse of Tongues since they don't have a D-Curse in this expansion. This is also a secondary negative for them since this means they are weak to being tunneled since they are forced to cast to stay alive. Having no magic dispel is also rough since they pair so heavily with warriors, and warriors are extremely punished by frost mages. They also don't have any great healing over time effects like Renew or Life Bloom. Since Earth Shield is such a large percentage of their total healing, this makes them extremely weak to Purge, because Earth Shield not only comes off with 1 Purge, but is also very expensive mana-wise. This is probably the biggest weakness that Resto Shaman has, because anything that is purgeable is very difficult to keep alive. The Restoration Shaman is a class that has a very solid toolkit for keeping your team offensive and generating pressure with its very aggressive spells. If you enjoy an aggressive playstyle and purging things until they die, then this class might be right for you. And the very last class on our list is the King of One-Shots. We are of course now talking about the Retribution Paladin. The Ret Paladin has the most unique damage rotation out of any class in the game because almost 100% of its damage comes from something called seal twisting, which is utilizing 2 different seals at the same time on your auto attack. This is possible because Seal of Command stays active for a short window of time after you have switched to another seal. This allows you to have a small window where you actually get the benefits of both seals at the same time. In order to do this efficiently, you need to start in Seal of Command, watch your weapon swing timer, and then at the last sliver of time, roughly 0.4 seconds, switch into Seal of Blood, allowing you to have both seals go off on the auto attack, giving you multiple seal procs at once. This means that if you line up your seal twist correctly and the stars align in terms of RNG, you can truly 100-0 any class in the entire game. Why you would want to play a Retribution Paladin is because you enjoy playing a melee who has a very solid amount of utility for their team, along with the highest burst in the entire game. Ret Paladins have the most support utility of any class thanks to their large toolkit of spells to help their team like Blessing of Freedom, Sacrifice, Bop, and Off Heals. They also have a friendly dispel for not only magic but also poison and disease, making them the only DPS in the entire game to have this. You of course have the biggest burst out of any class in the game thanks to Seal Twisting, Wind Fury, and Reckoning. Rets are also incredibly tanky to physical damage if they put on a shield thanks to their plate armor. This allows them to survive for quite a while dueling any type of melee. Moving on to the weaknesses, they are very prone to going if their mana is not used properly, with this only being amplified by anyone who has a mana drain on the other team. They also don't have any gap closers. While they are slightly faster than most classes, they still don't have a charge or a shadow step. This forces them to often use repentance to reach their target. With them being tanky into physical damage, it is quite the opposite for casters. If a Ret is caught out in the open versus a Frost Mage, there is a very good chance they can die simply by being out of position. Touching on that further, if a Ret's freedom gets purged, they are very susceptible to being kited. This can also drain their mana quickly if they are forced to spam Dispel. The Retribution Paladin is a class with phenomenal support for their team, allowing them to have both offensive and defensive playstyles. Combining that with the fact that they have the biggest burst in the entire game puts the Ret Paladin in a very strong position across every single season in the Burning Crusade.